Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1500 to 2000 ELO in chess.com rapid games, where I'll be explaining my thought process as best as I can for your education and entertainment. Here, my opponent opens with d4, we play c6, and I play c6 for many different reasons, and one of them is that it gives white the opportunity to transpose into a Caro Kann, which he does. And as you can see by my username and the other videos on my channel, I'm a big fan of the Caro. So of course we'll play d5 and we'll see what my opponent goes for. There are many different options for white. White can take, white can push, white can play f3, white can play knight c3, white can play knight d2. You can even go bishop d3. I've seen that before. And yeah, we'll see what he goes for. I think at this sort of rating, the most common moves you're going to face are either e5 or takes. Those are the two most common that I tend to see. The exchange variation, personally, I play that with the white pieces. So when I play with white against the Caro, I play take and c4, known as the Panov. My opponent goes e5, the advanced variation. Something tells me he's not particularly booked up on the Caro, considering he's clearly a d4 player, since he opened with d4. And okay, so in many of my previous videos, I've recommended the move c5 here, which is what I've been playing for years. But recently I've been learning bishop to f5 more, and I've been playing bishop f5 at the like 2200-2300 online blitz sort of rating. And I've had some really good success with it, even though I'm not particularly booked up on the theory. I don't think I need to be. The reason I didn't play bishop f5 initially is because I was always concerned about h4, known as the Tal attack. Sorry, the Tal variation. But it's actually not very scary. My opponent goes g4, so okay, this is the Bayonet Attack. I also don't think this is that scary. I don't know whether we're supposed to play bishop e4 first. Oh, maybe we are, and then induce f3 and then go back, but I don't think it's a massive deal. And I mean, with this, I'm pretty sure we just play h5, if I remember correctly. Because white can't really take this, because, I mean, we'll just take back. And this h-pawn is a massive weakness. And if white pushes, then we just dominate the light squares. We'll happily play e6. Now, I think we have to be slightly careful here. So we don't want to play a move like queen b6, I don't think, because then white can play the move e6 himself and sacrifice the pawn, play bishop d3, and after some kind of bishop trade, try to invade with the queen. I think in some of those lines, we're forced to play king f7, which is very uncomfortable. So the gist of what I have learned from these positions is just play e6. Stop white from going e6, stop white from going g6, and the position is pretty comfortable. So on a move like bishop to d3, for example, again, I think we have to be a bit careful, because let's say we trade and play a move like c5, which is normally good, then g6 is slightly concerning to have to deal with, because let's say take, the king will have to move, and, you know, it's a very weak king. But my opponent goes c4, which I have to admit I'm not particularly concerned about. This also gives us the opportunity to play bishop to b4 check whenever we want. So for example, on bishop d3, my plan was knight to e7, just to defend the bishop. However, that would block in my dark squared bishop, was the only downside. Or maybe to play bishop take d3, queen take d3, and then knight to e7. And I suppose we can put the knight on f5. But now, if bishop d3 is played, we have the option to deliver a check on b4 first, and then let's say knight c3, then we can go knight e7. And the difference is, if the pawn is back on c2, then bishop b4 is always met with c3, which comes with tempo, right? Which is a problem. So c4, okay. White challenges our center, but I don't think we need to be concerned whatsoever. Again, we can deliver this check. That looks reasonable. But do we want to commit to that? Because we do have a lot of pawns committed to light squares. So do we really want to trade off our dark squared bishop? I don't know. I don't know. We could consider a move like queen b6, which is often just a decent move in these lines, putting pressure on d4 and b2. I suppose c5 might be annoying there, though, because we don't have time to go b6 because it comes with tempo on the queen. And if white can play something like c5, b4, a3, bishop b2 and get away with it, then it can actually be quite an annoying positional bind. So, okay. We could take. That's not completely ridiculous. We have a few options there. We can deliver this check, for example. And if bishop d2, then we can take on d4. And if take... our king is actually quite weak because of this bishop, though. So although we're up a pawn, I'm not sure that's good. It's interesting, though. Or we could deliver a check on e4 and pick up the rook, which is quite interesting. We could deliver this check first. Bishop d2. Take. 97. Again, interesting. Like I said, I don't know the theory in these lines. In a lot of the openings that I play, I like to prioritize understanding the positions and ideas of the opening rather than simply memorizing loads of different lines and lots of different computer analysis moves, because I feel like it helps me to better counter strange moves from my opponent, or if I simply just forget the moves, like I need to have a grasp of the position, which is something that I preach a lot in my videos. Okay. I feel like knight to e7 has to be the move. Now, if c5, then we can go for the immediate b6. And I think we have plenty of play there, because if something like b4, a5, you can't play a3. And if something like take, I mean, the white center is just falling apart. So white takes, okay. Well, I think we should... Well, obviously we have the option to take back with many different pieces here. We could actually set a trap by oh my god, come on. We could set a trap by playing queen takes, which comes with tempo on the rook. And the idea would be, if queen to f3, which is the natural looking move, then we have bishop to e4, skewering the pieces. Yeah, and knight c3 we can just take, and then knight take, bishop takes, we're up a piece. But if queen takes, I think white can just play a move like rook to h3. And that actually looks alright. We do have knight to f5 going after this pawn, knight to f3... I feel like our initiative runs out. So, okay, what about knight takes? Reasonable. The move that I want to play is pawn takes, because then we get the c6 square for our knight. This is a tough decision, because we have 4 different options to take on d5, and honestly, I did not expect my opponent to take at all. Taking with the e-pawn feels wrong, simply because we give e6 in the future, and also we're not accomplishing anything. Like, at least taking with the c-pawn, we can put the knight on c6. Taking with the queen, we hit the rook and we put pressure on the pawn. I'm going to take with the pawn, just because that's normally how you go about these positions. Okay, queen b3 going after b7. Alright. The first question we should be asking is, can we give the b7 pawn up? I don't think so. Because after rook to b8, queen to a6, rook to b6, queen to a4... I think we run out of initiative there, and our knights are kind of falling over each other, and this diagonal's very weak. So I'm leaning more towards a more simple... we could actually go queen c7, which comes with tempo on the bishop. So let's say queen c7, knight c3, knight c6. Maybe there's knight to b5, which is quite annoying. Yeah. So perhaps queen d7 is the way to go. And bishop to b5 can just be met with knight c6. That's not a problem. And then we can play a6 to kick the bishop away. We could consider queen b6 as well, which does offer the doubling of the pawns. But to be honest, it just opens up our rook, which probably should be a good thing. Yeah. I feel like queen b6 is the way to go. And I expect my opponent to take, to be honest, because it looks like a natural move. Now, the only downside of doing this trade, of course we double the pawns, but it's not a big deal, really, because we get the open A file, which is often a very good trade to make. The queens come off the board as well, which means that our king being a bit vulnerable isn't a massive problem, because there's no queens. And, you know, if a check is delivered on this diagonal after the trade, we can always play king d8, potentially. Okay, he goes for it immediately. This I was not concerned about. I don't really see what the point is, because we just go knight b to c6. This is under attack. Okay. Bishop b4 looks great, but I think there's just knight to d2, hitting the bishop, defending the knight. So, what's wrong with a6? That's the move I want to play. If a6, bishop takes c6 check, I have to take with the queen, because if I take with the knight, then my queen hangs. So a6 take, bishop's under attack, let's say knight c3. Don't love it. So what about knight to f5, just adding an attacker, and preparing to develop the bishop? Knight to f5. We could also consider rook c8, but I feel like it's more important to get castled to break this pin. So knight f5, let's say bishop e3. We could always take. We could give a check. Oh, wait, no, he can take that because my knight's pinned. Whoops. Okay, we can't do that. I still feel like this is the move. Let's play it. And in these structures, where you have these pawn chains going against each other in the center of the board, with the c-pawns traded off, which we have accomplished, the d-pawn is often incredibly weak, and you can see that it could become very weak in the future, which is ideal. Taking is kind of tempting, because you can't take with the queen because the bishop hangs. So you have to take with the pawn, which, you know, damages your pawns a bit. Bishop e4 again is met with knight d2. Also, a pawn on e3 actually means that the d4 pawn is well supported. So I'm not sure about that. a6 take. Knight c3. I don't love it. Maybe rook c8. I think I like rook c8. Point being, now, if I play a6 and my opponent takes, I want to take with the rook so that I maintain the offer of a queen trade and my queen is defended by the rook. But if my opponent refuses the queen trade, then my rook is just on an open file, which is good. Okay, knight c3. Okay. a6. If knight to a4, I just take. a6 take. If knight to a4, take. I think just rook c2 should be good. Yeah, I like that. Let's play it. And I think we are coming to a situation where some pieces are going to get traded. You know, we always have the option to take this bishop, but I'm not sure whether I want to do that yet or not. But I think we're going to get to a situation where we'll have kind of like a late middle game / end game with the queens off the board, where material will be equal, except we will have a better position with, like, Our king probably will go to d7 to monitor the c file, which is always useful to stop any infiltrations. We will have very good pressure on d4, on h4, potentially on the b2 square as well. Okay, my opponent retreats the bishop. Not a move I considered, but also not a move that I'm concerned about. I think we can just go ahead and take. And I'm really liking our position. Okay, I'm very tempted to take this bishop and play knight to b4 to try and infiltrate the light squares. You know, a move like knight d3 check would just pick up a clean pawn. I don't really see a reason not to. It just looks good. And we also win the bishop pair, which is definitely a good thing. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really, really appreciate it. How does white meet knight to b4? Well, he could play king d2. Just making sure that nothing comes with check, which is reasonable. We could also consider knight to a4, chasing down the bishop. And if here we just push, of course. So here you can't go to c2 because my bishop controls that square. If you go back here, then I can come to c4 with a nice fork. And I don't know how you defend that because you don't have knight d1 because your bishop is on d1. So if knight to a5, white might just have to give up the bishop, which should be good for us. Because we will have two bishops versus no bishops, which should favour the side with the bishops. There is a case to be made for just bringing in our own bishop and applying some good pressure. Reasonable. We prepare something like king d7 to connect the rooks, which makes sense. If bishop to b4, a3, take, knight to a5, bishop's under attack, pawn's under attack, there's never any rook b1. That should be good. So a3 is off the cards, let's say king d2. Knight a5, well then you do have bishop to c2, because the king controls that square, but we do have knight to c4 check. And that should win at least a pawn. So yeah, let's go for bishop b4. Let's bring the bishops in and just apply some nice pressure. White can't stop knight to a5. It's going to come no matter what he does. And by playing bishop b4, we're one step closer to playing king d7 and connecting the rooks. So that when white tries to challenge us on the c-file, we will be in a position to hold the tension on the c-file. And if white ever takes, then we can just take back with the rook. And if white wants to trade all the rooks, let's say the king goes to d2, then that's fine, because the endgame should always be favourable for us, because the white pawns are weak. Okay, king to f2. Interesting. Unpinning the knight, but the knight has nowhere useful to go, realistically. So knight to a5 looks good, applying pressure to the bishop, also threatening to just win a pawn. However, knight to a5, rook to c1, take. Yeah, king d7 looks pretty solid. Looks pretty good. And the bishop pair is super strong. Super strong. We could start with king d7. White could move the knight. The knight's not... Oh, wait, no. The knight can come to f4, actually. Although we can always just move our bishop. And then the knight's pointless. And you can't play e4 to break the position open. So yeah, let's go knight a5. I think this is very, very nice. Again, a3 always hangs the bishop, so you can't do that. So my bishop is just on the b4 square, and you can't really get rid of it. You can't go bishop c2, because my bishop controls that square. You can't go bishop to a4, because then I'll just play b5 and hit the bishop. Which also grants me even more control over the c4 square. So this is a really nice position. These are the types of positions that I really like, where, you know, material's equal. We're in, you know, a queenless late middle game / endgame. We have an incredibly solid pawn structure, just dominating the light squares, which is very Caro Kann-esque. And white has lots of weaknesses. He has lots of positional weaknesses. h4, e3, b2. Okay, well now I think we should take the bishop. straight away, ruin his pawn structure, so he has now 4 pawn weaknesses. And I think just king to d7. I don't really see anything better. I don't think we need anything better. So we have a position which I think a lot of people struggle with, where we're clearly better, but we need to find a way through. Okay, knight to a4 is a good move, trying to come into c5. That is a good idea. If we go b5... Well, no, then there's knight b6 check. Okay, knight b6 check is a threat. Okay. Okay. That's annoying. Yeah, I kind of missed that idea, to be fair. That's a good move. We can't do this, because then knight to c5 check is very frustrating. So how do we deal with this? We could go rook c6. If knight c5, we probably have to take. We're also trying to double up, of course. Rook c6. Knight c5. Bishop c5. Rook c5. Rook c5. dc5. King c6. Rook c1. King b5. I think that looks quite good for us. Yeah, I like that. Let's go rook c6. And this is also very reminiscent of the previous, the previous video I uploaded yesterday, where we got ourselves into a very good endgame, where we were clearly better, well, / winning, but my opponent just kept fighting and making my life difficult, and you can watch that video to see how that all turned out. But this is the nature of like 1800 plus chess, where your opponents will just keep fighting and they will not make it easy for you. While we're not up any material in this position, it's clear that we are better, right? We have a better pawn structure, we have the bishop pair, and we have good control of the c file, which is the only open file, right? And white's pawn structure, like I said, is pretty dismal. But our opponent will not just roll over. He will keep fighting and make our lives difficult and try to find annoying tactics and keep pushing for some kind of draw or even win, right? So we need to be very diligent here and ensure that we are making the best moves and not blundering anything. And especially with 2 minutes on the clock, I need to shut up a bit when it's my turn and just make good moves. Because obviously commentating makes it more difficult for me to actually calculate, because I can calculate something very quickly. Let's say it takes me 5 seconds to calculate something, but then I have to spend maybe 20 seconds like vocalizing it and explaining it in a digestible manner. So my commentary might be a bit not as good over the rest of the game, but we'll see. Okay, yeah, knight c5. We can consider this. I think we should take, though. If rook take, pawn take, then king c6 looks very good. Yeah, knight d4 isn't a big problem. If bishop takes pawn takes, rook hc8, b4, knight's coming into d4, but we do have bishop to e4, b6 on the way. Yeah, I think I like that. There is something to be said for bringing the king to c7 there, but I think this makes more sense. We could start with this. Right here, take, check, king b6. That looks good. Yeah. b4. Let's double up first. This feels right to me. Now let's go for bishop e4. Just because knight coming to d4 is very annoying. And we're, of course, pinning it to the rook. Making white's life annoying. I think we happily trade the bishop, right? I think we should be happy to trade. G6 could be annoying in the future to break our structure. But, you know, these pawns are just very vulnerable. And B6 should be on the way. So let's say rook D8, unpinning the knight. Take, B6. If take, push king C7, we stop the promotion. Yeah, we always stop the promotion. That's fine. Very least we got up a pawn from my calculations. So yeah, I think we take the knight the moment we can. And endgames are just always incredibly favourable. Okay, rook up. Interesting. I think still B6 though. We're not being forced to take, so we probably shouldn't. A5 is tempting, but it feels wrong. Let's go B6. Take. Okay. No, this is actually quite annoying. A4, no. We need to take the knight, because the knight just unpinned itself, so we have to take it. Take. Oh, no, we can actually... Yeah, no, that's fine. We can look at these sorts of ideas. Yeah, let's take. Yeah. I think this is actually quite good. Pawn b3 also restricts the movement of this rook. Rook c2, yeah, this rook can't really move. Let's ask some questions with rook b4. How are you defending this? King g3, check. King h3. Rook e4. And we'll pick up the e-pawn. Now, if we go rook e4, there is rook b3 infiltrating. Something like rook b6 is quite annoying, potentially. Should we come back? Should we maybe try and get the pawn to a4? Here, take. Rook b6. Of course we can't take that. But we can just take here with check. King g2. Rook e4. Rook's probably coming to c4. Yeah, I think that should be good enough. The reason I throw in rook to g4... By the way, if this, then just this. And if check, king goes back, should be fine. The reason I throw in rook g4 check is simply to push the king a little bit further away from the center. Just because nothing really changes in the position other than the king being on g3 or h3, and I'd just rather the king be on h3. Yeah, I should probably go for this. If take, then my king just blockades. And my rook's going to cause all kinds of havoc and then get the d-pawn rolling. Of course, your rook is hanging right now, so white has to do something. c6 looks like the most logical. And I'm probably going to go king c8. There's an argument between me for king d6, though. Maybe it's quite a good argument. I don't know. Do we want pressure on the rook or the pawn? Probably the pawn. c6, king d6, rook b6, check, king g2. A5, rook A6, rook B3, rook takes A5, rook B6, rook C5. We trade everything. That should be winning. I think this is winning, just because we're currently up a pawn. E3 should fall, unless you do that, but that's really passive. That's really passive. I mean, it's playable, though. It's playable. Okay, well, I suppose rook E4 should be played. Preparing rook C4. Right? That seems logical. Also just, you know, reapplying pressure, keeping the pressure, and making it so my rook can now maneuver via the 4th rank. Okay. But I think this kind of just transposes, no? Let's go rook C6. Rook back to B3. I don't think that works. Let's give a check again. If you come here, I'm just going to take on H4. So you have to go back. And white's just wasted a move, effectively. And now I'm going to take over the B file. And I want to play rook B5. That's my idea. And the point is that I'm applying pressure to everything. And also, I'm maintaining my pressure on H4. I'm trying to keep this king completely out of the game. You know, while the king is not that good a piece, right now, it could be good in the future. Okay, what about this? I don't know. Here, well, no, then I can just take. If here, take. No, I actually don't want to do that. If here, I'm going to go here. And if here, well, then white's pieces are just tied down to be passive. And I can probably push the pawn a bit. I can also just throw in G6. There is rook F2 ideas in the future, going after F7. If take... What about E5? That is very tempting. Should I trade? Typically, it's good practice to get the rooks, to get a pair of rooks off the board. Typically, that's good. No, I'm going to come back. It feels correct. Now E5, right? And I want to go king to E6. Problem for white is his king still can't really do anything, because if he ventures too far, I can just play rook to b4, and you'll be forced back to defend h4, and I can give this check and force you all the way back to h3. Yeah, I can just come up, and you're going to have to go back. I don't know if I can win the c-pawn, though. Maybe I can. Maybe something like d4 and bring the king up. Maybe that would work. Okay, I don't think there's a massive rush in this position. How do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? Do I want to go d4? Let's just bring the rook back, see what he does. Give myself a bit of increment. maybe I want to push the a-pawn, but feels good on a6 with my rook just defending everything, to be honest. I see no reason to change the status quo there. I think I just have to commit to d4. Take. Yeah, let's go for it. Let's go, d4. Take. I now have access to d5. Now my opponent could give this check. Ooh. No, that's just losing. That's just completely losing. Yeah, that's game over. Because you can't defend this. You're down way too much material. So, yeah, if rook here, then what? Just a5. And I'm up 2 pawns. Completely winning. I could also consider rook check and picking up b3 and giving this up, but it seems easier just to play a5 and trap the rook in a sense. Let's go king e4 to shepherd the pawn. Also, h4 is still incredibly weak. I can also consider pushing the f pawn, and after en passant, then I have 2 passed pawns that I can push. This is, yeah, clearly winning. A really interesting endgame. I think the endgames we've been getting in recent videos have been incredibly instructive, so I hope that they've been really useful for you guys and hopefully quite entertaining too. Just because, like I said, opponents at this rating range, they just keep fighting. They make your life very difficult. And they're good. They're good players. Okay. Let's do this. Because he's taken his eyes off of d4. We're moving a little bit closer over here. And we're also preparing this, which forces the king all the way back. Yeah, white's playing too passive here. I mean, he's losing regardless, but I suppose it's that. Now we have mate threats, of course. Yeah, let's do this. You can't take because of mate. And I'm going to take the b pawn and push the a pawn. So you probably have to move this. But that gives me access to e2. And I will also play d3 first. And then just pick up the b pawn. Some interesting endgame technique. You can give that check, but it doesn't matter, really. Actually, it's more accurate to come here rather than infiltrate, because you can create counterplay, but the problem is I'll play check, and then you'll be forced to trade rooks with me. And actually, I can play a really funny move where, yeah, you just have no moves. If you take, you get mated. If you don't take, then you get mated anyway. Everything loses. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this was hopefully a really interesting game for you guys, and hopefully the analysis will be very useful. And, yeah, I'm really enjoying the bishop f5 advanced Caro. Like, as I said, I don't know the theory. I spent a lot of time in the opening because I don't know the theory. But as I mentioned, I've been playing the bishop f5 advanced Caro in, you know, 23 against 2,300 rated players. In online blitz, and I've been playing some really good games of chess, and I've been really enjoying it. So I hope this was enjoyable for you guys. Let's jump into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. Okay, so the engine gives my opponent 79.8% accuracy and us 88.9%. It looks like we definitely got a very sizable advantage out of the opening. Let it slip a little bit, and then played the endgame incredibly well. So let's jump into it. d4, c6. Like I said, I play c6 against everything, basically, with the black pieces. And of course, white doesn't have to go for a Caro Kann. I have people in my comment section saying, oh, well, what if your opponent doesn't play e4 against when d4, c6 is on the board? Well, I do know how to play other openings. So here I would play the Slav, right? Against bishop to f4, I play queen to b6, which I have videos on, which I've called the Centurion system, because it doesn't actually have a name, but it's really, really strong. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else white can play here other than something like this or this or this. You know, and then knight to f3, I can just go d5, and we get a normal looking position. We can transpose to a Slav very easily. But my opponent chooses the Caro. So we go d5. My opponent goes e5, and we go bishop to f5. Like I said, c5 is what I normally play. But recently, I have been learning bishop to f5, and I've been loving it. So g4. The Bayonet Attack. I've realised I should have played bishop e4 first. With tempo on the rook. And then after f3, bishop g6. I think the point is that you just take away the natural developing square for the knight. So, you know, it makes sense. Here, white is supposed to sack the pawn. Right. And is it different if I don't throw that in? I assume e6 is still good. Yeah, it is. It is. If anything, it's better. Oh, no, it's not. Queen d6, take. Bishop takes. This is fine, actually. This is fine. Okay, h4, though. h5 only move. Of course, h5 is the only move. h6 is the... Obviously, if you do something stupid, like knight d7, then you will just get your bishop trapped, right? The bishop's completely trapped. So h6 is the other move you could play. But here, yeah, white just gets e6. Also, g5 is on the way, and it's very, very uncomfortable. So h5. Again, the computer wants the immediate e6. And after something like queen d6, ef7, bishop f7, g5. White's doing well, but we do have better development for the time being. Knight d7, knight e2, apparently. e5, and I don't know. I quite like this position for black. We're going to castle queenside, I think, and have a pretty nice game. But g5, and we are immediately better because we play e6, which is, again, the best move. And now this pawn structure is kind of silly. It's just a silly pawn structure now because my position is completely solid. Now, bishop d3 is the move I was expecting, which is the best move, and I was going to play knight to e7, which is the best response. The problem is, we have to be slightly careful. After something like take-take, if we play something lazy, like knight d7, then I was expecting the move g6. And here we really can't take and allow the queen in, so we would have to play f6, which I mean, do we really want to have this pawn on g6? We're better, but it's a very annoying pawn. But c4 was surprising. Knight e7, the computer prefers taking. And I calculated this line. I thought bishop d2 we could take on d4, the engine agrees. I thought that this bishop was quite annoying on this diagonal, but the engine disagrees. Queen d6, that looks scary. Queen c1, king e2, queen c4, king e1, what's the point? Queen e4, king f1, c5? And knight d7. Of course, yes. And we cover the checkmating squares. Looks scary, though, but apparently we're just winning. But yeah, I played knight e7, which is fine. cd5 is a very bad move. It was very confusing. The only move that I was really thinking I needed to calculate was c5, but I thought we had plenty of counterplay. After b6, if you take, then fantastic. If you go b4, then I go a5, and you can't play a3 because take, and I pick up the rook. So something like take, I was just going to take, and if take, then, I don't know, queen takes, bishop d2, queen b6. We are clearly better here because white's pawns are so weak, and his position is just very vulnerable. So cd5 was odd. I took it to c-pawn, which is a mistake. Knight takes is the best move. I didn't really pay much attention to it. C takes is the second best. But why is this so good? c5. Okay, what about if take? Knight c6. Let's say knight c3. Knight to b4. Oh, I didn't even consider that. Oh, wow, okay. So bringing the knight to d5 is simply to go knight to b4 in the future. Huh. Can we play it immediately? Okay, no, then there's knight to a3. Okay. Now, if the knight comes to a3 voluntarily, then it's just bad. And we can always take it and ruin the structure. Interesting. cd5. Queen b3, I went queen b6. Okay, so my initial instinct was knight b to c6. And it's the best move, but I couldn't figure out what we do after this. The engine says knight d4. And if check, knight e to c6. I didn't consider this. Yeah, this definitely would have been the way to go. I just thought this diagonal was very vulnerable, but yeah, the knight on d4 is great because it stops bishop to b5 ideas. Yeah, okay, makes sense. I went queen b6. We're still better. The best move for white is to take. But we're still better because, I mean, we have these open lines. I was expecting something like this, and I thought we were, you know, not winning, but certainly better. And I could always move the king to d8 to unpin the knight, which was my idea. But my opponent went bishop b5 check. We go knight b to c6, of course. Knight to f3, knight to f5 is the best move. Okay, very happy. I was initially considering a6, but I rejected it on the basis of bishop takes c6. I'm forced to take with the queen, otherwise I lose my queen, so queen takes and knight c3. I thought we were better, but I don't know. I wasn't convinced here. And the engine thinks it's not as good as what we went for, which is knight f5. Bishop e3, rook c8 is inaccurate. Bishop e7 is better. Knight c3 castles. We unpin the knight, so you take it. Queen b3, a b3, bc6. This feels wrong. I don't know. This just feels wrong. I can't explain why. King d2? What's the point? Oh, b3 is just weak. Yeah, and you can't do this ever. And you can't do this. So the pawn just hangs. Okay. I win rook c8. Knight c3, a6, bishop a4. Wow, the engine wants queen a7. Okay. Take, knight e3 is the mistake. So the engine wants the immediate bishop b4, which is reasonable. I think the reason I took is because I wanted to go knight to a5, but I thought my opponent could go bishop to c2. But you just can't, apparently. If take, knight e to c4. Oh, and yeah, there's just two different things hanging. So I just go up a pawn with sustained pressure. You know, everything is collapsing. So I went for this, which is wrong, but we're still better. Bishop b4, engine prefers bishop e7. Okay. King f2, knight a5. The engine wants to take. Why? Rook c7? What's wrong with c4? dc4? Bishop c4? Oh, okay. There's tactics. Okay. I went knight to a5. Rook ac1, knight b3, a b3, king d7. The engine wants castles. I suppose because knight to a4 doesn't come with any checking threats then. And we can go bishop a5. And if knight c5, we just go rook c7. And we don't have to trade off our bishop. I went king d7, knight a5, and white almost equalizes. Rook c6. The engine prefers rook c7? Really? King d8 only move? This felt wrong. But I suppose if you take, then the knight's under attack, so you have to retreat. And then I go rook c8. So, what can you do? Best move is bringing the knight back. And then we go bishop c2, which is what I wanted to play. Knight c5. If we take, then I assume take. Interesting position, though. Interesting. I win rook c6. Knight c5. The engine wants to take. I was going to take with the king, and after rook c1, sorry, not rook d1, rook c1, king b5, this is what I was looking at. Oh, and now we just can't do this. What about if this? Okay, everything is just about held together, but it's tetchy. It's tetchy. Knight c5, though. We take. I was considering king c7, which is also good, but I thought taking was easier. I thought this endgame was better for us. Engine wants the immediate b6. If take, then just take, and these pawns are very weak. But I thought we can go b4. bc5, bc5. Rook b8. But then you get knight d4, and this is very concerning to me. This feels very concerning, because let's say I play a move like rook here, then white is basically winning. The knight just holds everything, and I can't get rid of the knight because my bishop is on a light square. So I thought this made more sense to go bishop e4. Engine agrees, but white is slightly better. Rook c3 is wrong, though. Rook h to f1 is better. This is what I was calculating to unpin, and I was going to play take-take. So knight b6. And you says king e2. And if take... Oh, right. The point is to line this up. That's the point. And then I have to come back. And then e4. And you break open the center. Interesting. The way my opponent played it... B6... Okay, a5 is better. Oh yeah, of course a5 is better. You can't defend. Of course that's better. I don't know why I played b6. I was on low time, I suppose, but... Rook hc1. I take on f3 to get rid of the knight. bc5, bc5, rook b8. So we are better here, slightly. But it should be a draw. But if anyone can win, it's probably black. Although this pawn looks very scary, it's blockaded. It can't do anything. So rook 1, c2. Rook b4. The move is g6, by the way. Which is what I was concerned about. Is g6. Breaking up my pawn structure. But he doesn't go for it. Rook 1, c2. Rook b4. Forcing king g3, give a check, force the king all the way to the corner. Rook e4 is good. Rook b3, rook e5, rook b7 is a mistake. Rook f2 has to be played. Now with king to e7, then rook b7 works, so I have to go f5. gf6, gf6, rook f6, rook c5. I am winning here. If check, king c6. Everything is well defended. And the white pawns are scattered. And I'm up a pawn. But here we have rook c7, rook b3, rook e4 is best, because the rook needs to get back into the game, and here I just went rook c6. The engine prefers rook a7, which is ridiculous. Why would you put the rook on a7? It looks horrific. So I played the far more natural rook c6, king g3, and give a check, force the king back, rook b4 is best. Rook b3 is good, rook a3. The engine wants me to take. I was struggling to evaluate this position. I thought this should be winning for us, but I couldn't figure out how. The way the engine wants to do it is rook c7, and then getting the king to c6, and then freeing up the rook, basically. Which, in retrospect, makes a lot of sense, but I didn't realise that. I went for this instead. And went e5, and went for, eventually, d4, once I'd shuffled a bit. Okay, the engine was rook takes. Okay. I went e takes. I wasn't concerned about rook to e2. I was just like, well, I'll just go here. You have to move this rook, and this should be winning. I don't know. I pick this pawn up. This is weak. I push the d pawn. It should be winning. Rook c4 for my opponent was a horrific move, though, because it just lets me win everything. His rook has no way back into the game. And then, you know, some decent... what's the word? Decent technique here, just to keep the white rook at bay. Rook c3 I was really happy with, because I'm going to play d3. And like I said, you just can't take because you get mated. That's the problem. So after king g1, just d3. And the game is basically over. And you can never move the rook off the back rank, because the moment you do, this happens. And you get mated. So yeah, a really interesting game. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And the Caro Kann remains undefeated. I don't know if it's actually undefeated, but it's undefeated in spirit, at the very least. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, you're going to really like this Caro Kann video as well. And if you want to watch the previous episodes of the speedrun, as well as Series 1 of the speedrun, check out the playlist down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.